Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new build for my series, Building Nancy Drew in The Sims 4. Today we are building the one, the only, Ramsey Hall from Nancy Drew Warnings at Waverly Academy. This is a build that I have wanted to do for a very long time, and full disclosure, I've built it once before, but I made a mistake when I was building it before. I basically finished the entire build earlier this spring, but the way I started when I did it that time was I started by creating the outside of the building first, and then attempting to fit everything in on the inside. And by the time I got around to doing the library, which for some reason I saved for the last room, I had realized that the library was way too small. There was just no way that I was going to be able to fit it into the original build, even though everything else was to scale. The bedrooms upstairs were to scale, the rec room was to scale, the classrooms were to scale. All of it worked except for the library. So basically, the game is lying to us because the library is so much bigger than the actual building would suggest. The layout is also different than the game suggests. It definitely messed with my head a little bit trying to figure out the layout for this build. So I had this done sort of at one point in the spring, but I just did not want to release this build without it being as close to perfect as I could get it in my mind, because many of you know this is my favorite Nancy Drew game. Warnings at Waverly Academy holds a very special place in my heart, and I wanted to do it justice. I didn't want to release it with a dinky little library that didn't look anything like the one in the game. So, my apologies for it taking so long, but it is finally here. We do finally have Ramsey Hall in The Sims 4. I will be uploading this to the gallery as well. My gallery ID is in the description below. But my gallery ID is Spirit Scarlet 100. And you can hopefully find this build there. When you do go to my gallery page, you have to click the box that says show custom content. I have custom content in my game, but I don't use it when I do my builds, just because I want people to be able to download it without having to replace anything. So when I do builds that I want to upload to the gallery, I don't use my custom content. It's just for when I use it for fun. But because of that, all of my builds are flagged as having custom content, which means that you have to have that little marker on if you want to find most of my builds on the gallery. Kind of a weird little glitch that's been around for a very long time and they haven't fully fixed. So basically with the library, what I started off by doing was figuring out the general size and layout, and just kind of putting things in to try and figure out how big it actually needed to be. And doing it that way, I was so much more happy with how it ended up turning out. I filled it to the brim with these bookcases from the university expansion pack, which I think worked perfectly for the library. The style was exactly what I was looking for. The color was exactly what I was looking for. And this little loft area, this second floor, is I think really what makes this one of my favorite rooms that I've done in The Sims 4 so far. I just personally love how it ended up looking. It feels very much like an actual library to me, especially the one from Waverly Academy. So I was extremely happy with how it turned out. I hope that you guys are as well. I had to muck around here a little bit to figure out the roofing and the lighting and everything so that I could have it be open to the second story without also having to have weird fencing floating in the air, because fences don't do that typically. They don't typically float in the air. So yeah, I played around with it a little bit, and then I looked at a lot of reference images to try and match the library as closely as I could to the one in the game. And because this library ends up having to be 2 stories, that's really what mucks around with the actual floor plan when I make it, when I start to work on the upper levels. This is a huge build. It took me a long time to make, and my computer and my editing software couldn't handle this being all in one video, and plus a 2 to 3 hour video would be a little much. So what I decided to do instead was to break this up into a 3-part series. So this is part 1, which is focusing primarily on the library and the majority of the first floor of Ramsey Hall. And in the next couple days, you will get to see a video of the bedrooms and the second floor, and then the finishing touches and the exterior of the build, which I end up doing last because I learned from my mistakes and I did the exterior last once I was positive that everything fit in the interior. I love how the bookcases kind of curve around the outside. I imagine that these are books that aren't checked out as often just because they're harder to get to. So it kind of reminded me of like the restricted section in Harry Potter. For those who don't know, I'm a big old Harry Potter fan. And I just loved the vibe that it had going up there. I could totally picture myself going up there and browsing through the books and even just sitting on the floor and flipping through things. I imagine that the Waverly Library has just tons of beautiful, old, vintage, first edition type books. Like, I'm sure they have a stocked library, especially since the founding of Waverly Academy was really focused on literacy as an important skill. So I imagine that they have a great selection. I did end up needing to squeeze the desk part where Nancy kind of fiddles around on the computer a little bit. And you will notice too that some of the bookcases overlap a little bit. There are lights hidden behind the bookcases, so it gives light to the areas without making it too bright. Because when we walk into this room, into the library itself, it's kind of dimly lit. It has a very romantic, old vintage, dark kind of feel to it, but I wanted it to still be able to be seen. So there's a subtle glow to it when I hide the lights behind the bookshelves, which was fun. I enjoyed doing that. I also made the decision to stack these bookcases so that the books go all the way up to the ceiling on most parts of the second floor. I just liked how that looked a lot more. They don't necessarily have that in all areas, but sometimes in The Sims, and I've mentioned this in previous videos too, that you need to make some creative decisions because The Sims, while a very powerful game for building, is not perfect and we can't execute everything exactly the way I would like to most of the time. So sometimes I make some creative decisions here and there to try and make it look good in The Sims while still maintaining the character of the original build, and that's something I did with having the bookcases go up all the way to the second level. It is kind of funny too, because literally all the books are exactly the same, but even in the game, most of the bookshelves are very similar just because it would take a long time to actually make them all look different. So every single bookshelf is exactly the same, but you can pretend that they're all different. I tried to decorate this little area to make it as much as possible like the little library area that Nancy has, with a library cart and just fun little community items. I do work with all of the packs, so this build will probably have something from pretty much all the packs. I didn't limit myself by any means, which is, I mean, that helps me make it as realistic as possible or as close to the real version as possible, which in my mind makes it a little bit more fun. Might make it a little bit harder to download, but as an actual build experience, gets us closer to the actual reality. This is, like I mentioned, my absolute favorite game, and I'm trying to do a build from each of the games. And many of the games have these massive buildings that are really the only option for building, and that's the case with this game. But because I love that game so much, this one was really just a really nice experience. It was really fun trying to make it come to life. I could totally imagine myself assigning this as university housing, which you can do. I tried it out. If you have the university pack, you can assign this as a university housing lot because there isn't a stove or a grill or anything. And you could have your students, you can make it an all-female housing unit, so only girls can live here, and you could assign it to either University of Brightchester or Foxbury Institute. I feel like it has more of a University of Brightchester feel, just kind of that more like liberal arts, traditional, old kind of university rather than a more modern, science-y, technology-oriented university. So I love the idea of putting the Waverly girls into this build. And I have done a creative sim of the Waverly girls before, so I love the idea of having them all be college students and having them have their different majors and live in their different rooms together and just going to school here and just kind of like playing out Waverly Academy. I think that would be super fun. And that's something that I definitely might try at some point. The library does still end up being a little bit smaller than the one actually in the game. But even with the size that it is now, it ends up making the bedrooms upstairs bigger than they would normally be. So I figured it was okay to have that side just be a little bit smaller. It's still a pretty massive library. I mean, it's a good sized space. I also was attempting to have this area be lifted up a little bit because when Nancy enters into the library, she goes down steps. But playing with different levels and split leveling in The Sims 4 is darn near impossible. So eventually I just kind of gave up and was like, okay, I'm just going to differentiate it with a different flooring, and Nancy's just going to have like this entrance where she could walk in without going downstairs as much as possible. And then kind of just adding some finishing touches to the library itself, some columns and whatnot. Actually, I think the columns don't end up working out either. Sims 4 are just being so difficult. And now we're moving on to trying to figure out the floor plan of the rest of Ramsey Hall, which a lot of it you will see in this particular video because figuring out the base level was tricky. And again, I did it primarily by looking at pictures of the game and kind of placing furniture as I went and then building the floor plan and the actual the sizing of everything around that. So every time I pause, that's me like looking up a video and trying to figure out what on earth to do. And trying to find doors that are very similar and furniture that's very similar, and also trying to fill up the space so that it doesn't look super empty. Because in some builds, it does end up looking super empty, and we don't want that. We don't want just a plain, boring hallway. We want it to feel like really lived in and really expansive, realistic. At least that's what I want when I'm trying to do builds. That's always my goal. I use a ton of wall art in this build too. There is a bunch of wall art, like when you actually go in the game and look around. There's quite a bit on the walls, but we are kind of limited in the options that we have for wall art within the games. So I do repeat some paintings here and there, just because the traditional wall art that this build requires, we don't have a ton of. So some of them get repeated, not right next to each other, obviously, but you might see a painting downstairs that is very similar to one upstairs. And so this really confused me. This might just be me being geographically challenged because I have a hard time with directions in general, but these stairs that I just placed, I always thought that they went up to the sitting area that's near Rachel and Leela and Izzy's rooms. I thought it went up that way. But when you go up these stairs, it actually brings you to Mel and Kareen's rooms. So I was super thrown by this when I was like testing around in Waverly Academy and testing around in The Sims. I was like, wait a minute, don't you like go one way to get to the other way? And then I realized if the stairs are going to go here, the rooms would technically be on the right-hand side of the stairs, but the library is in the way. How on earth am I going to do that? So that's why I'm probably pausing here more, is because I'm trying to figure out, wait a minute, have I been lying to myself all of these years? Is the layout of this building different than I thought it was? Because apparently it is. You guys should let me know down in the comments if that is confusing to any of you as well, or is it just me? Am I the only one who thought that the building was laid out completely different than it actually is? Because it blew my mind a little bit. I've played this game a lot of times, and I've always thought that these stairs, for whatever reason, go closer to Rachel's room than they do to Kareen's room. So that's probably just me. Again, I struggle with directions in general. I have to use my GPS on my phone to get pretty much anywhere, even though I've lived in the same area for, 5 years now? 5+? Yeah. Directions, me, don't get along. When people can say, oh, you just go east, I just kind of stare at them and I'm like, wait, but what way is east? And how do you know which way is east? And I know the sun rises in the east or whatever, but what do you do when the sun is directly above you? What if it's like noon or 1? How do I know which way the sun came from? Oh yeah, you just go east, go north. Like, can you tell me left or right, please? Or give me some sort of like landmark to go by, because I have no idea what you're talking about. Usually I just tell people, can you just give me the address so I can put it in my phone, because I have no clue. I will get lost. It's a conundrum. Let me know in the comments if you guys are like that at well, or if you're actually really good at directions, in which case I bow down to you, because well done. That is not a strength of mine by any means. So this is me being super confused and being like, wait, I don't have anywhere to put Corrine and Mel's rooms. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to build something on the bottom floor to support the rooms on the right side of the building, which I end up doing. So that we do have bedrooms for Mel and Corrine. It'd be kind of a sad build of Ramsey Hall if they didn't get their own bedrooms. It wouldn't be a very accurate build either. So yeah, down on the bottom, I'm going to use that space for like some bonus rooms, and then I put Corrine and Mel's rooms on the opposite side of the hallway, which again, does not make sense to me. I still think it's weird, but what they're probably doing in the game is that their rooms would be above the library, even though that doesn't really make sense given the proportions of Ramsey Hall when you look at it from the outside, but it's a computer game, so it doesn't have to make sense. But it does need to make sense if you're trying to make it in The Sims. So again, creative liberties, we do what we can. This will end up being the entrance hall into the building itself. I'm pretty much finished with that hallway. I just kind of added a bunch of hallway decorations for it, and I'm trying to figure out the spacing of everything, like how big everything needs to be. I also did the windows purely based on screenshots. So ultimately, when we go outside, the window placement is kind of haphazard. It's not super organized. There are definitely places when you look at the building where it's like, there should be a window there. Like, it would look a lot better if there was a window there, but there's a lot of places where I can't put windows. For example, behind all of the bookcases on the front of the building, I can't put a window there because it would just be looking at the back side of a bookcase. So no windows there. I kind of combat that and fill in the space by using a lot of ivy, and it ends up working out okay. I definitely prefer the outside of the first build that I did for this of Ramsey Hall. I definitely like how the outside turned out a lot better because, I mean, that's where I started, so I really refined the outside and made it look really good, but then by the time I got to the inside, I couldn't even fit anything in. So unfortunately, I couldn't keep it that way. The outside of this one is still okay. It definitely doesn't look exactly like it does in the game, but in order to fit everything in, we have to make certain sacrifices. I made so much use of these cats and dogs paintings. These ones, the kind of horizontal ones and the vertical ones, I think I use every variation of that painting. I use a lot of the vampire paintings as well, and a lot of base game paintings. Again, lots and lots of wall art in this build. Ramsey Hall is such an interesting idea to me because it is a dorm room, but it also has some classrooms, and it also has like common areas like the rec room. It's got a library right there, which is interesting to me. You guys should let me know if you've gone to college, if that's kind of, or like a private school, I suppose, because this isn't technically college, even though it kind of feels like it. If that's something that you've experienced, where buildings have dorms, but also a bunch of common areas, because when I went to college, the dorms were completely separate. They were literally just bedrooms. There wasn't any classrooms even nearby any of them. And I went to one university my freshman year, and then another one for the rest of my college years, and that's how both of them were. So I don't know, but maybe private schools are different. Perhaps. It's just an interesting concept, but I like it as a multi-purpose building, and I think it could work really well in the university world because it is so multi-purpose. Like, it would be a great student housing area because you have all of the bedrooms and everything, but then you can still get a lot accomplished in this building. I end up putting like research machines, and there's computers everywhere. There's lots you can do. There's easels, I think. There's the piano, so your Sims could still build a lot of skills here. So now we're moving on to kind of trying to figure out the layout for the snack shop and the rec room. I absolutely love the snack shop puzzle. If you've seen my walkthrough, my stream, or my review of Warnings at Waverly Academy, I have probably talked about the snack shop puzzle. Or if you've seen anything about like my favorite puzzles, I probably say the Waverly Snack Shop puzzle. I don't know why I love it so much. I think the idea of it is just so cozy to me. Like, I would have loved to have something like this when I was in college. It would be dangerous because it would be tempting to always go get snacks, but it would be so cozy. Like, if you're super stressed out from studying and you're sitting in your room and you're like, ugh, I want a cup of tea, or like I want a cookie. You could just go down to the snack shop and order a cup of tea and a cookie. I mean, I guess they don't have tea, but realistically, I feel like the snack shop actually would like maybe serve tea and coffee. That would make it even better. But they do just have juice. I guess they're high school students, so maybe they wouldn't have coffee, even though a lot of high school students drink coffee anyway. Now I'm thinking, like, what could make it even better? Because it's already pretty wonderful. The outside of this part of the building in the game is a tower. It's rounded. But in the game, when you're actually in the rec room, it is not rounded. So I'm like the outside and the inside do not match. Again, they don't technically have to because it's a video game, but it made building it a little bit more tricky. It's also very difficult, surprisingly, to find good, dark wall colors. And I built this part, I believe, before Eco Lifestyle came out. No, I definitely did. But we did get a couple good wall colors in Eco Lifestyle that maybe I could have used. The pastel-y ones end up working out okay. It's interesting because this part of the room has green, the area where the couches are, but it's definitely darker than this in the game. And then there's like a rich yellowish brown on other parts of the rec room, which again, like the pastel-y one is okay. It's still got some darkish hues to it. It's not the best, but you know. I also took some creative liberties with the back of the snack shop because, I mean, I added a mini fridge because you kind of need one in order to get snacks. I did end up adding a coffee pot, so you can make coffee. And the backsplash was tricky to find, the coloring was tricky to find, the shelving was tricky to find, so I kind of just used inspiration from the original snack shop and then did my best to make it like a functional, actual little kitchen area. So again, if you were using this in university, your Sims would have an awesome little area to go get some food real quick, get some coffee. That technically is a bar there, so they could get themselves some Sims juice. They could get all sorts of stuff. You can't get yourself an apple or a toasted bagel. You also can't get... You can get a sandwich, but you can't get toast, just plain toast. What else can't you get? You can't get an orange. You can get chips. You could get a bag of chips. You could... Well, no, you can't get a cookie because you can't make the cookie. We have chocolate chip cookies in The Sims 4, but you can't make them. So yeah, just trying to add in the shelves here and make it feel like it's a very full space. I wanted it to actually feel functional, so I just kind of fill the shelves up with a bunch of kitchen-y type items, things that look like you would use them to cook or make snacks and whatnot. So that's what I'm doing here, cluttering up the snack shop. If you guys had the choice, would you go to a place like Waverly Academy? Because it's a boarding school, so it would be away from home and family and stuff like that. This building specifically is super cool. We don't see any other buildings of Waverly Academy. But it would also be interesting because it's like going to college before your college years. So I don't know. Curious what you guys think. Would you go to Waverly Academy if you had the choice? I'm inclined to think that I would, just because I am a very aesthetic person, and this building specifically, and imagining living in this building for my college experience or my later years of high school, I love that idea. I love being able to just walk downstairs and I'm in this beautiful library, or being able to walk downstairs and, oh my gosh, here's this awesome little snack shop. This fun little rec area where I can hang out. And the seating areas upstairs, they'd be such fun areas to study. This building has it all, honestly. I would go to a place like this for college, hands down. Probably high school, but maybe not. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. We also have a fun mixture of wood tones in the rec room, which I'm not a huge fan of, personally. Like, obviously... Even in my house now, we have a wide variety of wood tones because it's super difficult and expensive to get all matching wood tones and everything. In The Sims, when I'm designing, I definitely prefer to have matching wood tones just because I think it makes everything look nicer and a little bit more cohesive. So if I had the choice and I was just designing this without looking at any reference images, I probably would make sure the wood tones match a little bit more. But instead, we have this nice little black TV center with the orangey wood coffee table, which actually matches quite a few other things. I'm not positive if that ping pong table is functional. If it's not, it could maybe be moved around a little bit more. The building could be slightly expanded. The Wake the Llama table probably is functional. I wanted there to be a couple different fun things that The Sims could do, so there is more of that community feel down here. There's also like the dartboard I fit in, so we can play Scrap with Leela, which I love. I really enjoy the idea of bringing the Waverly girls here and actually like playing out their experience here. Oh, those paintings from Get Together, which I just put on the walls, those also were like perfect for this build. Loved it. This ends up being the classroom that Nancy goes into for one of the final puzzles of the game. And I figured, now this is me trying to figure out the second floor plan to fit in all of the rooms that we need. At which point I realized that these bedrooms are going to be way too big. Like monstrously way too big. And the windows are off. The windows are in the wrong place. And Corrine's room does not lead out to the oak tree, so Nancy can't climb out the window technically to climb the oak tree to go after Casper. She can't do that, but which made me sad because continuity, darn it. But no, it's just not possible given the current layout. I hope it's not that big a deal. It probably isn't nearly as big a deal to most people as it is to me. But because I have such a heartfelt connection to this game, I'm like, why Sims? / why developers making libraries bigger magically? It's like Hermione's bag. It's bigger than it should be. It doesn't make sense. Building this little collage wall was actually really fun. This is in the game. Actually, they have this like nice collage of a bunch of different portraits and fancy art, so I tried to kind of mimic that with the art that we had. And it's something that I want to do in more builds as well, because I actually really like the look of it, even with the traditional paintings and all of their different designs. I don't know, it just ended up working out well. I use these Realm of Magic doors so that I can kind of get a stained glass kind of look. I don't use any of the stained glass patterns, but just like that fancier window look. And then the globe bar. So again, more options for Sims Juice. If it's a university lot, I feel like it would be very functional. And even if it's not, I mean, I currently have it coded as a residential lot because when I wanted to move in the Waverly girls, it was like, you have to enroll them in university first if you want to put them in here. So I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to keep it as residential because I don't want to have to wait for them all to get accepted into university before I can actually do anything. That would be kind of silly. I am adding doors here, which actually are in the game. We do actually see doors in this hallway. And then I leave these rooms empty for now. I believe those are going to be furnished in the third upload of this little series of Building Waverly Academy. But they'll end up being classrooms / kind of bonus rooms, just like the other big room on that first floor ends up being. I'm adding a couple finishing touches here, but we are coming up soon on the screenshots. For this video, I will just add in screenshots of the library and the rec room and that main entrance room. And I will add in full screenshots at the end of the third video. Again, these are posting immediately after one another. But I really hope that you enjoyed this build, fellow detectives. I had a really fun time working on making this build. It definitely was a work in progress. It took a lot of time, a lot of tweaking, and a lot of effort. But I am ultimately happy with how it ended up turning out, and I hope that you guys are as well. Please feel free to give this video a like if you enjoyed it. That engagement helps us find new fellow detectives. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think of this build, if you enjoyed it, or if you would have done anything differently. And if you're not subscribed yet, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims content. I do a lot of crossover content as well as just plain Nancy Drew kind of things. So thank you again so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.